But now for reaction to Tucker's interview with the Attorney General Jeff Sessions. We're joined by former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. Newt, what's frustrating is to watch Sessions down there in El Salvador. He's doing the work and advancing the agenda that Donald Trump won so startlingly on and so successfully on in November. He's very gentlemanly, very genteel. He was hurt by the comments. That's a natural response. Sure. And compare that to this interview that Scaramucci gave to The New Yorker that's filled with expletives, trashing Steve Bannon, who has been carrying the conservative populist banner for years, loyal to this president, trashing Reince Priebus, who's been working really hard in the administration, regardless of what people say about how effective he is. That's just a study in contrast, and also another example of an administration stepping on its good news and its message. And for a lot of my radio listeners, it's very frustrating.
Well, I think it is frustrating. I think, first of all, to distinguish the two, in the case of Sessions and the president, I think the president is very deeply pained by things like his son-in-law and his son being taken into a witch hunt, which is what it really is.
Which is what it is, yeah.
And so I think in that sense you're seeing a man who is thrashing around because of the pain level. But you'll notice I think Sessions has taken it in a very mature way. I think Sessions is doing a great job at the Justice Department. Virtually every one of President Trump's major values at Justice are being implemented by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And my guess is over the next 2 or 3 months, that'll all shake out, yeah, and will work out. Today's soap opera, or yesterday's really, is unfortunate because, you know, Trump is trying to do a lot of really big things. And he's actually getting a lot of big things done. And the soap opera blocks you from seeing the big things. So there's this huge victory on deregulation, repealing 16 regulations for every new regulation. But how can you see it with this kind of a soap opera going on? They had a relatively good statement today about the tax cuts they want to move this fall, which are vital to the economy, which matter to every American. But, of course, it's totally drowned by the soap opera. And, you know, I mean, my advice would be, let's go back to remembering the White House should focus on actually solving real things, and people should work together and recognize that the primary opponents are outside the White House. They're not inside the White House.
Well, and is this not about the people of the country? This is about America and Americans. Right. And we need happy Americans. Ronald Reagan always understood that. I always go back to Reagan, and maybe that's not fair, but I came to Washington in 1987 to work for President Reagan. And the idealism and the resolute nature of the way he went about his business, he wasn't perfect, had some scandals, but in the West Wing, there was a sense of, I don't know, even with the rivalries, there was a sense of purpose. There was a sense of we were in this together. And when it's such a public feud versus keeping it inside the family, you know, Scaramucci was out there saying, well, you know, I'm a straight shooter. Well, yeah, sometimes these fights are better settled behind closed doors rather than in public. I mean, I'm sorry, but to go after Steve Bannon, to say he's there in the White House until 11 o'clock every night or wherever he is because he's trying to build his brand. Bannon doesn't need to build his brand. He's trying to help the country and help Trump. And I think I'm sorry, I like Scaramucci. I think he's really talented. But this episode is humiliating to the president. I think it ultimately humiliates him. It does not serve the communication of this agenda well. I'm probably going to tick him off by saying it, but I say it out of deep love and affection. Look, it's not helping his agenda at all.
Raises the question about what do we mean by communications director?
What is the communications director job? What was Pat Buchanan's job?
Yeah. And first of all, most communications directors don't appear on television. Most communications directors are directing.
But he says he doesn't want to be on TV. He says he doesn't want the limelight. He made that point in an interview. In an interview.
He's gotten right. Yeah. So, but most communications directors who are successful spend their time recognizing that the White House has enormous assets. It has all the cabinet officers. It has all of its outside allies. It has people who are spokespersons on various media shows. And the communications director's job ought to be to orchestrate a strategy to maximize getting what the president wants to get done. And if you take, for example, the tax cuts, these are enormously important to this administration. They may be the key to the 2018 election. And they ought to be spending 80 or 90% of their time building that coalition that makes sure the tax cuts get through by Thanksgiving. every time you get into one of these soap operas, you take away energy, you weaken the team.
Is it demoralizing to the people inside the government?
Of course it is. Look, if you end up, if this was a football team and you end up fighting in the huddle, it's not helpful. I mean,
but Bobby Knight was a successful basketball coach. I happen to be a big Bobby Knight fan. He humiliated people, but he got the best out of them.
Right.
Someone compared him to, maybe that's what Trump's trying to do, because Trump must have greenlit all of this.
Look,
Scaramucci wouldn't have done this unless Trump. I don't know.
No, look, I
hope not.
And that's why I'm drawing a distinction between what Scaramucci did and what the president did. I think the president, you can make an argument that in the Lombardi Bobby Knight tradition, he's very rough and tumble, but he really forces people to perform.
Right.
And he really gets an amazing amount out of people. And he's also, frankly, prepared to change people. Look at the campaign where they went through several campaign managers. I mean, Trump in that sense is very hard driving. He doesn't think that his success is a function of any one person.
But he can do that himself, Newt, right? He can change the staff himself. You don't have to send out a hitman to bruise up your people until they...
My advice to people like Priebus and Bannon is, do your job. Don't get involved in some fight. Do your job. Get up every day, serve the country, help the president. And I think that's the order, by the way. You serve the country and you help the president. If the president wants you to leave, you're two doors down. It's not hard to communicate that.
That's what Sessions' attitude is, and I think that's the smart attitude.
Sessions has exactly the right attitude. He's not going to get sucked into a soap opera. He's going to run the Justice Department. He's going to implement the values that he and Trump agree on. And
Sarah Huckabee Sanders was on Martha's show last hour, and she said she basically hopes that Scaramucci cleans up his act, but she was very diplomatic in the way she said it. But I think she's acquitting herself with great grace and under the circumstances. Speaker Gingrich, thanks very much. And as we speak,